Thank you. The book is super. I've read the book. So for those who haven't, read it. As a mum, as a fellow mum, I really relate. And I think all mums are multitaskers, guys are as well. But what really resonated for me, and this is why I've been really wanting to meet you and have you on my show, is that, my dad, he was an author, and he always said to me, because I used to act in films and stuff, I was no big star, but he always said to me, after kids especially, he said, never stagnate, always reinvent yourself. And I did that by creating a show, and I'd noticed that you've really, now I don't know if it's a reinvention, but you've really become a huge name as an author, and you write very well as a columnist, and honestly in your own right, apart from having done films and your universe, as Pritish mentioned. But was this a conscious decision? Like, did you decide one day that you're going to reinvent yourself and you're going to? Because you said that it came from Pritish, and the book you also mentioned that Sarita nudged you in that direction. But I'm sure you always knew it was in you. I mean, obviously, you've always known that you had this hidden gift. So, did you consciously decide that, okay, now I'm going to reinvent and I'm going to be the discovery of the decade, as Karan said?
Um, no, I was planning on writing when I was 65. When my kids have gone, I would go to Goa, I would do some drugs finally, and just relax. And that was my plan. This all happened to me much earlier in life. And I had it down to have wearing white kurta, having short nails, never dyeing my hair, going on my motorbike. But life gives you opportunities, and sometimes you say yes and it works out. I don't think anyone can really plan to reinvent themselves. It's probably a plan that would flop, I guess.
No, I think honestly, because having spoken to moms, what I find is a lot of people assume that after the kids, careers may dry up. But I've actually found that they actually can be nourishment for a lot more. So, I mean, I'm just saying huge congrats to you, because I think you've done that, and you've done that very successfully. And I think it's very admirable.
Thank you.
So there are just a few, one or two or three you can name, and most of us parents are literally begging with a begging bowl, please give admission, but there are limited seats. So would you look forward to something like that?
If I follow your plan, why don't I just run for Prime Minister and run the country also?
Well, anyways.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hi. Anyone who writes, especially for the internet, you're really putting yourself out there and opening up yourself for like lots of feedback, which is sometimes negative. Do you ever feel like you have to deal with internet trolls at times, like people who just, because they're anonymous on the internet, they feel they can say whatever they want, whether as comments on your columns or as tweets, and how do you deal with that personally?
Of course there are, trolls. Every time I write something against, I would say, or not against, but something against a certain political party, I don't know, cockroaches, they just come running out from everywhere, and I'm busy spraying hate on all of them. Does it bother me? No, because I might like someone, I might not like someone, but for me to be a person who goes on their page and sort of sprouts venom, I don't know what kind of a person I would be, so I assume that a person like that I have no respect for, so why should I respect their opinion?
Anybody else with questions before we move on?
Actually, those persons don't exist, as you may be aware.
I don't know
They're
whether they exist or they don't.
They're just technological innovations.
Yeah, and it kind of lasts for 24 hours,
That's right.
and then it just dies out, so yeah.
Like cockroaches.
All right, before we move on, Twinkle, we have one question, that most of our readers would like to know. This book sort of happened, and it, everything sort of put together into one. It's doing so well. Do you have plans in the pipeline of something else, probably fiction this time, since you're a voracious reader and you write so well, with all the feedback that you've got on this book of yours?
I actually didn't want to write this as my first book. I had a very serious book in mind, a pre-partition book about this family. And my editor at Penguin hit my head with a thesaurus. I lost my memory. I wrote this instead. But yeah, I'm writing something. It's fiction, and let's see.
Oh, that's a serious work, is it?
It's not serious. It's not serious.
And she's not telling us that now, if it is.
It's fiction.
All right, thank you so much, Twinkle. Thank you so much, Mr. Nandi. I think you brought
Pleasure.
out lovely insights into, Twinkle's personality, what you know about her, and how she's sort of found that, that has found its way into the book. To all our customers here, to our readers, thank you so much for being here with us. Twinkle, many congratulations on the book, and we hope we get to see you right at Crossword launching your next book, and the other books do equally well. Thank you so very much. Like, why do all Hindu boys worship their mother? Because their religion tells them to worship the cow. Well, to know all of this and much more, or to see all the wit and fun that she's put together in this book of hers, I'm now going to hand it over to Twinkle. And of course, a very special thank you to Mr. Pritish Nandy for doing us the honors. Thank you so much, sir, for coming. Before we have Twinkle and Pritish both talk about the book, can we unveil the book for our audience here? We have a wrapped copy for both of you. If you all can kindly do us the honors, we have the print media in front and the electronic media behind. We just need a few photo ops, and for that, if you could unwrap a copy of the book. Here we go, Mrs. Funnybones. Please don't forget to grab your copy. Twinkle will be more than happy to sign copies post the event. All right, thank you, Twinkle, for joining us here today. If you can see right there, we have your book as the Crossword #1 bestseller in the non-fiction category. So congratulations on that. Can we have a round of applause? The book has been released a short while ago and is already, receiving rave reviews and such positive word of mouth. Congratulations, Twinkle. Pritish, thank you so much. We know you have an association with Twinkle of sorts that we'd like you to talk about. But Twinkle, tell us, you've already had a launch of the book, and today it's more about, of course, telling us more about what's in the book, but how does it feel? Your first book out, receiving so much of positive reviews and, so much of positive word of mouth.
What should I say? I'm mighty pleased, and it's wonderful. I didn't expect any of this. I actually wasn't even going to write a book, and the person who's responsible is Mr. Nandi. He is the one who first came up with this idea that I should write a book. In fact, he handed me a contract as well. And it's all thanks to him. That's why he's in my acknowledgements. He's the person that I call up. He's a dear friend, not my 3 a.m. friend, because his line is tied up with other women at that point. So, but yeah.
Mr. Nandi, would you like to tell us a little more about this so-called contract, or, the push towards writing a book?
Well, it was another publisher to whom I very strongly recommended that a competitive publisher.
Oh, at this point, we'd like to thank Penguin Random House. Thank you so much.
And I said, this book will be a killer app for you guys. Just go and do this book. And I said it on the phone. In 24 hours, there was a contract. I tried to persuade her that she's wiser than I am. So she kind of looked at all the commas and punctual stops and threw it to her lawyer, her chartered accountant, and the man of the house, and whatever. And at the end of it, she chucked it out and went with Chiki Sarkar, which is fine. I think Chiki Sarkar is a great woman and a fine publisher.
All right, Mr. Nandi, I'm now going to hand it over to you. We can move into a freewheeling conversation, after which we come back to the audience a little later with questions. So, over to you.
It's a great pleasure to see the book leading the bestseller list out here, because till the other day I saw, despite the fact that I think she's the cleverest writer around these days, that I saw her lagging behind Chetan Bhagat and the Malayalam Manorama yearbook in one of the bestseller lists. So I thought I'd ask her how she copes with these kind of minor disasters.
So Mr. Nandi has this habit. On Twitter, he will talk about other writers and tag me, and then I'll make a lame comment and it will be called a Twitter war, and he's doing that again. He's pulling me into this thing. I'm extremely envious of this Manorama textbook in a way, and in a way it's heartening to know that people are buying books on general knowledge, so that's a good thing.
It's an almanac actually, it tells you your fortune too.
No, it doesn't. And about the rest of it, well, I did tell Mr. Bhagat that I will never sell as many books as him. So if I come close to that, then I think it's good enough. I've already made my stance clear.
You know, she's in her speech, as much as in her writing and in her book, she's devastatingly wholesome. So I want to ask her how she manages to stay so wholesome.
Am I like an atta product which is wholesome and healthy? I mean, no, there's nothing wholesome.
No, there's nothing remarkable, even remotely mean, vicious, angry, opinionated. Nothing. It's charming. It's always wonderful. It's a great experience reading her, because when you read her, you come away saying, "Hey, that was fun," and you're not having fun the way you normally have fun by being mean, vicious, the usual stuff that we celebrate in this country, particularly in the media.
The man of the house says, I really wish you were this woman in the book who's always so calm and collected. And I tell him that I probably have to join Baba Ramdev and do 4,000 Kapal Bhatis a day to be that calm. So I'm not really as cool and collected as Mrs. Funnybones, but she's the woman I want to be. Let's put it that way.
Tell me, most of your articles are somewhat time-tagged. Is that a literary device, or do you really live your life like that?
I'm a mom and I have a couple of jobs, so time is a major factor. And the second thing is I want to say many, many things without boring people, and how do I tie up those bits together? That's why I came up with a time schedule, so that I can put it all together without using extra sentences to connect each bit. Because I could start a column with my Desi Jeeves coming and spraying deodorant on my flowers instead of water spray, and then end up with Hardik Patel and reserving seats for all the grade 8 moms. So I need to tie all of it up together.
The interesting part is that her actual universe in the book, the little that the columns that I've read, I'm sure I've missed out one or two of them, is a limited universe. And it's a small universe, it's a limited universe, but like all great writers, I'd say, Woodhouse, R.K. Narayan, Desani, many others, she kind of takes that small universe as a microcosm of a larger world, and posits herself and her universe against that, casts herself against that. As a result, everybody relates to it. How do you manage to get that? But most people don't relate to a lot of, there are gender biases, there are status biases, there are language biases. How do you get across?
I guess because we live in India, where we might have different economic backgrounds, financial backgrounds, but our cultural background is the same. So I would say that if I have 4 helpers at home, my accountant has one calm wali bai who's giving her the same grief that my 4 guys are. The other thing is religion seems to play a very big theme in everybody's lives. So in my life and in people who work for me and people who go to banks and who are in trains, it's this sort of thread that ties it up. I just look at everything that we have in common and put it together from my perspective. I like to say a little bit about what I think the way life should be, but I want to do it by making people laugh. Nobody's interested in listening to a lecture. If I talk to my kids and I give them a lecture, they don't care. But if I make a joke about it, then it kind of filters in, and that's what I do with my writing, I guess. Simple.
And why, again, curious, this is a very curious literary device. You don't name anything or anyone. When you talk about a book, you talk about a book. You don't talk about a specific. When you talk about a person, you talk about such a generic definition of the person. My Kambalabai. There's never a specificity to the objects in your column and to the people in your column. Why is that? That's very curious literary device.
This Tuesday, you will be in the column as you, Mr. Nandy. Okay, so we'll put you there since you brought this up. I don't know. I guess I didn't want to call the man of the house by his name. The other, and I'm an Indian woman, you know, we say Sunoji and all of that, so really that would have not worked. No, I don't call him Sunoji, but I just felt that people would be able to relate to it more if the names were not there. And, you know, that's, I don't know, that's just something that I started with. It wasn't something I really thought all the way through. It worked, it worked.
Yeah, if there's no specificity even about the place. You say we are traveling. Which place? Where? The city?
But I get my point across,
That's
right? Without all these little
No, it's
things.
perfect. It's
Yeah.
perfect. I'm just saying.
I mean, I
it's
have
a
other
unique
names.
literary device.
I have other names. I have stay free, sanitary napkins written right there. I mean, the things that we need to read are there. That's what we need to know.
I'm surprised times lets us go by without asking for branding fees.
I'm not going to get into it again. He's pulling me there.
Do you really enjoy writing? Because if you don't, how do you manage to write a regular column?
No, I like it. I love it. It's taking over my practice of yoga. I'm there. I'm writing, though I'm writing things which sort of revolve around my life. I'm removed from it in my brain. I'm absolutely separate. It's almost like being mindless because you are not really present there. It's words and tying them up, and it sort of flows. So yeah, it's a form of, I would say, my yoga now. You do yoga as well.
I do yoga as well, and I write as a discipline. I can't confess, I can't say I enjoy it very much. Like I've been writing for far too long, but I can't do without it. That's the problem.
It's a discipline I write every single day. I might write 4 lines, but I write every single day. Every morning by 7:30 I sit down and I write a little bit.
Do you read every single day?
I read every day, unfortunately.
Science fiction.
Science fiction. We actually bonded over Arthur C. Clarke, and he met him, so I was very fascinated. And then we decided we both like the mad comics, so
Yeah.
we have a few reading habits. Apparently, I only read things that plump, pimply teenage boys read: science fiction, horror, zombie stories. Yeah.
So I'm a plump. She's just behind me. She just described me. Plump, pimply teenage boy.
Be happy I call you teenage.
No, I think there's a lot of fun in the kind of stuff we read. That it was much. I think it's a little more fun than Dexter.
Then what?
Dexter.
What's Dexter?
We haven't watched Dexter.
No,
Dexter
I don't
is.
watch TV too much.
It's
a doctor?
It's a television serial about a guy who's a cop who goes around catching people and murdering them beautifully, elegantly.
I haven't seen that. I must.
Chopping them into little bits and pieces, and that is the in thing.
Yeah.
I just had a friend of mine, an advertising executive, an excellent writer otherwise, Anil Thakrani, who sent me his new book about a guy who keeps chopping up people. He doesn't do anything more than that, chopping up women. And I sympathize with him, but I think it's a little odd.
I don't know about chopping up women, Mr. Nandy, since you seem to enjoy that.
No, I just
good luck to
wanted-
you, but it's not something that I would confess to.
No, somebody's actually written a book on it, that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't even think of it.
This is just to safeguard him. If there's anybody chopped up in a bag, you know who to find. Somebody who enjoys that. So, any questions, anything that you want to know and don't know already? Hi, Tara.
Hi, Twinkle. Firstly, I'd just like to say a huge congrats.
Thank you.
The book is super. I've read the book. So for those who haven't, read it. As a mom, as a fellow mom, I really relate, and I think all moms are multitaskers, guys are as well. But what really resonated for me, and this is why I've been really wanting to meet you and have you on my show, is that, my dad, he was an author, and he always said to me, because I used to act in films and stuff, I was no big star, but he always said to me, after kids especially, he said, never stagnate, always reinvent yourself. And, I did that by creating a show, and I'd noticed that you've really, now I don't know if it's a reinvention, but you've really become a huge name as an author, and you write very well as a columnist, and honestly, in your own right, apart from having done films and your universe, as Pritish mentioned. But was this a conscious decision? Like, did you decide one day that you're going to reinvent yourself and you're going to? Because you said that it came from Pritish, and the book you also mentioned that Sarita nudged you in that direction. But I'm sure you always knew it was in you. I mean, obviously, you've always known that you had this hidden gift. So, did you consciously decide that, okay, now I'm going to reinvent and I'm going to be the discovery of the decade, as Karan said?
No, I was planning on writing when I was 65. When my kids have gone, I would go to Goa, I would do some drugs finally, and just relax. And that was my plan. This all happened to me much earlier in life. And I had it down to wearing white kurta, having short nails, never dyeing my hair, going on my motorbike. But life gives you opportunities, and sometimes you say yes and it works out. I don't think anyone can really plan to reinvent themselves. It's probably a plan that would flop, I guess.
No, I think honestly, because having spoken to moms, what I find is a lot of people assume that after the kids, careers may dry up. But I've actually found that they actually can be nourishment for a lot more. So, I mean, I'm just saying huge congrats to you, because I think you've done that, and you've done that very successfully. And I think it's very admirable.
Thank you.
And of course I know she's doing a lot of, I know the interior store, I know all that, but I think the writing has, propelled you up there.
From
so
one mom to
congrats.
another. High five.
Yeah.
Anyone else with questions? Well, yeah.
Do you have a funny take on Indrani Mukherjee?
I don't want to really talk about the shenanigans in Bora Bora. It's really it's sad, and I feel that instead of looking at people like Mr. Kalburgi, who got murdered for having strong beliefs, we are focusing on other things like this. How does this affect anybody else besides them? I mean, and in fact, Mr. Kalburgi's murder affects everyone else who wants to think. So yeah, that's my.
Thank you.
Inside this brilliant humorist lies a socially committed writer. I've actually read one column where she was very kind of tough, unyielding, and had a very specific point of view. But I noticed that from the next week back, she was back in her universe again. Do you plan to write the occasional what's going wrong with the world piece?
No, I don't plan it, but I write what
Moves
I
you.
feel, yeah, what matters to me at that point of time. And you called me once after I wrote a column on miscarriages, and you said that didn't sound like you. It was all serious. There was nothing funny in it. And I said there isn't anything funny about miscarriages. We're all hiding and pretending everything's okay. And somebody has to say that look, we go through it, and we're just women, and we take it. But that doesn't mean we're not hurting. And there isn't. So sometimes there isn't anything funny I can find. I don't find anything funny in this Indrani case at all.
Hi, I was very inspired by reading your column when you were talking about the All India Bakchod roast and facing a cave wall, and that went viral on Facebook and all of that. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, I was very inspired, but what kind of feedback did you get from readers? Was it mostly flack? Was it mostly people who were as inspired as I was? I mean, it was a very forward-thinking column that you wrote there, so yeah.
When I look back, I think that was the first piece that actually got me noticed. I've been writing for a year before that, but that was the piece that got me noticed. did I think that I would get this reaction? No, I just wrote it. You don't know where it's going to go and how. And I sent it off. I, I told my husband, I said, I think I wrote this well. And he said, no, let me see and I'll decide. So I was like, okay, you decide, fine. And I fell asleep that night, and the next day it was everywhere. So yeah, that did work well.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to know, Twinkle, I mean, going by what Tara said and just seeing a lot of the people in the audience and also your point of view and your columns, one might think that they're very skewed towards women. But I just wonder, in terms of the readership and the response you get, is it equally divided, and what kind of reaction do you get from your male readers?
I think it's pretty much equally divided. I do look at things from a woman's point of view. I can't help it. It's biological. That's the way I'm made. But I think it's yeah. I'm not male bashing. I might push a woman up, but I'm not really doing that, by making her stand on top of a man. Yeah.
What I mean is that, we sometimes live under this sort of ancient misconception that the men in our country are still also living under a rock. But do you find that there are progressive, just as progressive as women are today, that there are enough progressive readers of both genders who respond correctly and they get your point of view?
Well, here's one besotted male reader of ours who doesn't live under a rock, I promise you.
There are a few like him, and I wish there were more. Let's put it that way.
I read your column yesterday. In fact, I cut it and kept it for my wife. Just a suggestion, I'm a father to a 4.5-year-old daughter, and I would recommend that if you could soon start a school, because most of us parents are literally begging for a good school, and it's a lot of, there are very few schools and a lot of students, so would suggest, why don't you look at it? Because there is a growth for a